Hi everyone, it's Neve Celtic Mist. I did my first video I uploaded last week, and this is going to be a video response to Temperance Tarot, who did a video on how she reads the cards for herself. And so I'm just going to do a video response to that, to just review how I read the cards for myself. I don't read for other people. I actually did a few years ago, and I had an experience, and then I stopped tarot altogether because of that experience. Basically, a reading for a family member, and there was called the question whether the cards were showing what was going to happen in a situation, to I caused the situation by putting it out there. In the reading that I gave. So that kind of caused some friction in my family at the time, and so it also caused a little questioning for me, like a little doubt of, what really is tarot? What is, even though deep down I kind of knew that wasn't true, it still kind of unnerved me a bit. So I kind of stepped back from tarot, and it's been about 2 to 3 years, and I've been slowly getting back into tarot. I've been watching YouTube videos, but for right now, I'm just reading for myself. And because I'm not reading for other people, I thought Temperance Tarot, her video was quite informative, because I also I felt a connection, because I also, in the same way, I use both intuitive, and I also am not ashamed to use the book of a deck. I actually like decks with books that explain the artwork and connect the tarot to what is being represented in the illustrations of a particular deck. But I also have several decks where there is artwork with no book that is directly connected to the artwork, and it's just the basic little white book that gives you the general meanings of the tarot. And thinking about that after watching her video, I thought, well, gee, I do tend to read intuitively, but I do like to have the ability to go to a book as well. I don't do huge spreads for myself at this time. The biggest spread I do for myself right now would be a 3-card spread, and that would basically be to set up the day, morning, afternoon, and evening, what your day was going to look like. And when I lay out a 3-card spread, I actually will read it like a story, and that's what I tend to do, even with a single card. What is it? What is the card? What's the story being told within the card? And from that, what's a similar experience that I've had in my life, or what is presently going on, that I can try to find a message of what I need to be looking at in myself. For me, I think I mentioned in my last video, my spiritual path is very eclectic, but I consider myself a witch. And just from my personal experience and my craft, it is a spiritual connection, tarot. I use it as a spiritual part of my craft, and for guidance, really. To me, it's a way to connect and to try and receive the messages that I need to know on my journey, my personal journey for growth. So I don't use it as predictive necessarily, but just more to make me aware of what I need to learn, or something I need to work on. And so I consider it more a spiritual tool, although I don't discredit that it can be used, because I'll do a video on that later if someone wants to hear about it. But my first experience is going to someone to have my tarot read to me was when I really didn't believe in tarot at all. a friend took me, and it was to a woman who was, I would classify as a true gypsy. And she really did have some very strong predictions that eventually did work its way to coming true. And I was not a believer in that. So do I believe it can be used for that? From experience of having that reading done all those years ago, I would say yes. And that was my first look at tarot, and I felt not drawn to it specifically to tell the future, even though that's basically what I was getting from that reading from that person. But I did feel a connection to the cards and to the whole system. I was fascinated by it after that, and eventually it led me onto my with my path into witchcraft, and then it branched out, and I have included tarot in my practice. So how I do my daily readings is just usually one card. I like to be in the moment. I believe that we have the ability to manifest what we desire in our lives, but I believe you need to be present in order to do that, and not to focus on the past and not to focus on the future, but you need to focus and live in the moment, which is very difficult to do. And for me, the tarot daily draw helps me keep me focused on the now. What do I need to do now? What am I missing? Or what do I need to know? And I don't often have a specific question when I do my daily card pull. I just leave it up to the way the deck wants to give it to me, I would say, as far as it's sometimes the card falls out, sometimes I pick it, sometimes more than one will come out of the deck, and I then would read the 2 cards or the 3 cards, but most of the time I'm just picking a random card. I'll shuffle them and pick a card, and that's the one I have for the day. I keep track of my cards in like a bullet kind of a journal, and right now I'm using for my daily card pulls just the Llewellyn's Witch's Date Book, just because it has the different days all with a little block that you can write in, and so I just document my card, and I'll even document the day when I don't have a card, because when I've had a really bad week, I can look back and say, well, gee, I didn't have the time to do my spiritual practice in the morning, and it's my time to connect and get grounded and get prepared for the day. And I do feel that when I don't get that chance to do that, I feel off kilter, and I can look back and say, well, there you go. You really do need to have that 5-10 minutes. And if I don't have a lot of time in the morning, I'll just pull the card, do a quick write down of what I think I first see intuitively from the card, what it's trying to tell me, and then later that evening I'll journal about it, and I'll write a little bit more and think about it. Right now, for my daily draws, I'm using the Tarot Apocalypsis, and I do have the Tarot Illuminati, which just, I don't have to say too much about that deck. That deck was amazing, and it was very influential, very, I think it really brought a lot of kind of like a refreshing outlook on the Rider-Waite. The cards are very similar in the Illuminati to the Rider-Waite, just I don't like updated and modern, and they're so colorful. The Tarot Apocalypsis, I saw that it didn't get a lot of I would say is good reviews. There's a lot of people that I think not finding a connection to it. I have to admit, I got this copy in Salem. I'm lucky I don't live that far away from Salem. And when my husband and I do go there, we usually have a list of things we want to get, and they're usually specific tarot decks or stones or herbs, but I didn't have a specific deck in mind when I went to Salem this year. And I went into a shop and there was multiple tarot decks, and I was picking up some, putting some down, and I kept coming back to this. I pick it up and I put it down, then I pick it up again, and finally I just said, well, I guess I'm supposed to be getting this. And I wasn't really sure because I had seen, like I said, some different reviews about it, that it is different than the Illuminati. It's not the same. The book is in a hardcover, which I do really like that. The main thing I like about this book is that it shows the cards for the major arcana are a full page, and the image is a full page. And I like that because there's a lot of details in these cards. They're quite busy, which I know sometimes that can be distracting. I like to be able to pick up different symbolism within the artwork of a tarot card, and I think that helps me sometimes to go a little bit deeper or look at things that I normally wouldn't think about. In general, I think it lends to more of a intuitive reading because there is certain elements that you can pick up that are within the picture. And for the minor arcana, it's still a color picture, but it's just smaller. So an example is my card that I drew yesterday. I just thought I would. And real quick, the one thing I don't like about the book, the book itself reminds me of when you were a kid and you had you got a fairy tale book, one of those nice big ones with a hardcover as a kid and the beautiful colored pictures inside. And so that's what I'm getting. That's one thing I love about this book. But what I don't like about it, I don't know if you can see, is the binding is not that great. And I don't anticipate this book holding up to any sort of wear, which is too bad because I find myself being very ginger with it, but as you can see, there's quite a gap, and it creaks, and some of the pages just don't feel very sturdy in it. And of course, it's the cards are by Eric Dunn and Kim Huggins, and I like the way she writes. I like her viewpoint on the cards and the way she explains them. They're the Queen of Cups, as an example. Court cards are affiliated with gods or goddesses, and the Queen of Cups was given Aphrodite. And I think that's apt. For me, when I pulled this card, my intuitive feeling of this is obviously the cups are emotions, and the Queen of Cups is to me almost the emotional empress. She is very caring. She's supportive. She is there to help you deal with emotional problems, emotional issues. She's attentive, and so when I pulled this card, I saw a lot of, for my week of where I am. I do tend to take on and be there and support other people, family, friends in trying to keep an emotional stability. I would say I'm an emotional caregiver, and more like, I like to be supportive. I like to have, to be of help, and very nurturing, I think. And that, like, I don't believe all, I believe that there's a good and a bad in each of the cards. I don't read reversals because I believe, like I said, that when you pull a card, it's a reason, even if it's a completely good card and you can't necessarily see a bad. I personally think there's always a bad within every card. For this card in particular, I took it as I was recognizing myself as giving emotional support and being offering a nurturing stability, but on the opposite end of that can be very draining, because you can overextend yourself, or you can get to the point where the reverse is you may not be seeing, you may not be acknowledging another person's feelings. And to me, that's the reverse. And sometimes that has come up for me during the week, where I haven't been paying attention to another's point of view, or just dismissing someone's feelings. And not that it's intentional, but I think sometimes when you are an emotional caregiver, sometimes you overextend yourself, and in doing so, you can get a little fatigued, and then your patience wears a bit thin. So for me, when pulling this card, it was that I'm becoming in a situation I was not recognizing someone else's feelings. And the one thing I do like about this book in particular is it doesn't really give, a reverse meaning. She has it broken down like the way I feel. There's a revelation in the card, and what's the negativity, the negative aspect of the card, and it all depends on what's going on in your life. Now, I think you have to be honest with yourself, and sometimes when you do an intuitive reading and you're doing it for yourself, that's one of the hard things, is to keep is to be honest, because most of the time we don't want to look at the bad parts of ourselves or in a situation, and you tend to look for the good in the card. And if you get a card that's bad, then you try to rationalize, well, that's not the message I'm hearing. But if anybody's ever had a stalker card, then you realize that when a card comes up, or similar cards keep coming up, then it's kind of hard to ignore the message. But I think at least I can be sometimes pretty adept at making it come out the way, telling the story the way I want it. So I would think that's the biggest challenge. When I read for other people, I'm much more open to seeing the negative in the situation, and passing that information on, oh, you may want to, look out for this or work on that. And then when it comes up for myself, I might not always see that message. So I do work on that. If I feel blocked by a card, I definitely meditate on it and ask myself, what is this card trying to tell me? This is what it means, and how is this present in my life at the moment? And I try to think of the good and the bad, since there are no other cards around it and it's just a daily pull. There's nothing else that's going to be helping me. Sometimes I think that makes you work towards it. So basically that's how I do my daily draw. And for myself, a book that's also helped me look more intuitively at the cards is a book that I would highly recommend for someone that is trying to learn to read intuitively, and that's A Magical Course in Tarot by Michelle Morgan. This book was a big help in getting me to read intuitively and to trust my feelings with the cards. She has a lot of little exercises in the beginning of the book. In fact, she doesn't get to the actual explanation of the cards until the very end. And the first half of the book is all about, just like what it says here, getting clearer, and different ways that you can learn to, and she gives sample readings as examples of how to be creative in your reading. But the biggest part, I think, was helped me is this section here where she says, open your mouth and start talking when you're doing a reading. And to me, that really helped me. If you just start talking and tell the story, she basically says that it's kind of like an automatic writing or a channeling, because the cards are telling you a story, and you're the narrator, and it's your job to move with the images that come up. And she makes a point that if you just sit and stare at them and even don't speak out loud, you tend to overanalyze, and you can lose the meaning and then become more confused. So she encouraged you to throw the card down, or cards if you're using 3 cards or more, and then just start speaking out loud about it. This card is showing me this. I can remember, last week when I felt this way because of that, and whatever the next card tells you if you're using more than one. And I really like the idea of being the narrator to your own reading, and especially when you're reading just for yourself. And I think it helps to free up at least my mind, so that I'm not focusing on what I know as the basic meanings of tarot at this point, and to tell the story of what I'm seeing in the picture at that moment. And it's the first thing that comes to my mind. And I find that first impression is much more in-depth and more connected on what is going on with me and what I need to be looking at than if I overanalyze it and try to think of, well, the book says this, and I kind of see that. And so I do recommend that book. I mean, it's like reading the cards in a whole new way, and it absolutely is. Another book that I got a long time ago when I first started reading tarot, and I wasn't so sure of the meaning of the cards, and I was trying to learn the meanings of the cards, is Tarot Made Easy by Nancy Guerin. And this book, I actually do like this book, and I still go to it lots of times when I'm just stuck. If I actually, like I said, I most of the time do not ask a specific question, but when the time, if there's a card that comes up and I do have a specific clarification that I need, and I'm thinking it maybe one way, sometimes you are thinking of a specific topic, whether it's romance, money, home, work, and she has actually set the book up so that for each card she gives, what does this card mean in a reading, in a season, what's represented. For the Ace of Wands, it's autumn. The number 1, what does the number 1 indicate? And the focus, desires, the unexpected, travel, unions. So if you're stuck on what the Ace of Wands is trying to tell you, even in a specific reading, or you don't know why that card came up for you, and you're drawing a blank, to me this book was very, very helpful in just perusing these little bullets that she has down the side, and then saying, well, what do I think? Is it this? Is it anxiety? Is it disappointment? Honestly, the best ones I tend to go to and usually hit it for me are the blessings, the special guidance, best course of action, and the outcome. For the cards help, but there are just so many different meanings that she has for each card, and it's like a couple of pages I found it really helpful. It is something that helps jumpstart when I'm completely stuck. I can look at that, and one of these that I'm drawn to, that I'm thinking, okay, this is what I'm worried about, or I think, just what is the general meaning, or the best course of action, or special guidance or blessing that I need at this time, and I go there, and usually it's spot on. And sometimes it's not. Like I said, if you're going to go to specific things like finances, your physical body, family, news, visitors, whatever, disappointments, endings, it's usually something that I wouldn't necessarily interpret the card myself, because if it's a message I don't want to hear, I'll hear it here. I'll see it there, and then I'll say, oh, well, that's what I don't really want to think about. That's what I don't really want to think about. So that's pretty much how I read my cards. I don't want this video to get too long. It was just a quick response to Temperance Tarot, and I thought it was a very interesting question. We all know that tarot is a system that has really branched out, and a lot of people, when they think of tarot, it's reading for others and helping others, and that's a wonderful tool where you can help someone navigate through their problems, or a crisis, or something that they need guidance with. But when you turn around and you have to read for yourself, it's completely different, and it's not so easy to be so open and objective. But I find reading the cards intuitively is the way that works the best for me, and not to try to overthink it, and to think of it as a story, and in the moment, what's going on with me right now. I don't really try to use it as like a divination or predictive. It's more to help me deal with what's going on now. What do I need to see in this situation or this part of my life in the moment? And yeah, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I plan on making some others, and if you liked it, please hit the subscribe button and leave me a comment if you want me to do specific videos, either on witchcraft, or a little more about my practice, or just tarot in general. Leave a comment, and I would be happy to discuss it in a future video. Thank you very much for your time and for watching, and many blessings. Bye.